Dan, this is fantastic. And I'm so proud of you. Let me just say that personally, professionally, so proud of you because we both remember when.
Yeah.
I think I was involved with probably when you bought your first house
Oh, yeah.
on Weeks and working for Red Star.
Yeah.
And you were in all that. But first of all, tell me a little bit about your mom and dad. I mean, just this is for your family, Jim. This is basically an interview about your family.
Don't know where to begin. Mom and Dad were good. Grew up in Long Island, New York, outside New York City. Dad was an interesting guy. He's probably fifth, sixth generation of people, Berlins in New York. Grew up. It's funny. Let me go back further. His grandfather, was the first Jewish graduate of Columbia University Medical School.
Okay.
1882. I have his diploma on the wall of my office. His daughter, my grandmother, married the richest guy in town, who was ran a Columbia Club of New York, was a big business guy, big honcho. And my dad was born to them, lived in a mansion basically in Far Rockaway, Queens, still there. Grew up with nannies, German nannies, tennis court. And she, my nanny, my grandmother, when my grandfather lost his business and went broke and lost everything. She married richest guy in town. She went to work at Saks Fifth Avenue in the linen department, selling sheets and towels. Never missed a day for 60 years. There's a story in 1962, big blizzard in New York, and everything was closed, and she somehow got to Saks Fifth Avenue and knocked on the door, and no one was there, but just tough. I mean, she expected to live a pampered life, but when things fell apart, she pulled it all together and kept the family together. And so my dad grew up seeing that. I think he was burned by that because my dad was a wholesaler for textile business, which his parents had been in. And he never owned a house. We grew up in a small one-bedroom apartment. Doug and I shared what was supposed to be the dining room for our bedroom. And I think he got burnt by, when he saw his dad go through. I think he never wanted to be in that situation. So he never bought a house, which is kind of weird. And he did all right. He was middle class, but didn't want to take any chances. But my grandfather, though, I have on the wall as well in my office a letter from something called Hunter's Bank, which I never heard of, probably long gone. But like in 1920s, he had declared bankruptcy. And there's a letter from the president of the bank to my grandfather Moses Berlin saying, today we received the final payment of a bankruptcy loan that had been forgiven. And in all my years in banking, I've never seen anyone pay off a forgiven loan. He says, that'll be something that'll honor, the family will honor that forever. And I don't know if everyone else has, but just a kind of good blood, I think,
Your dad was in the wholesale business.
Yeah, he's a wholesaler.
And then how did you get here? Well, first of all, talk about your mom, first of all.
My mom, she got married to my dad when my dad was 40, actually, so he got married late. And she was a Brooklyn gal. She had a bunch of brothers and sisters. Mostly was a housewife growing up. But she was, the Cub Scouts, and she worked a few odd jobs here and there. But she was tough. She was if you see I say Jewish grandmother, but not just Jewish grandmothers. If you've watched the interviews with David Chase from The Sopranos, and Stevie Van Zandt, when he read the script, says, it's a great script, but no mother can be that tough. And David Chase says, that's my mom. That's my mom too. She's tough old bird.
Yeah.
So like Olivia Soprano.
Yeah. Was she a housewife or did she?
Yeah, she was a housewife mostly. She had odd jobs here and there.
Yeah.
But she was tough.
Now, how did you find your way here?
Well, long and winding road. Graduated high school in Long Island at 17. I was a year ahead, which good or bad. But so I ended up getting accepted to the University of Buffalo. And this stuff all sounds crazy, but it's true. I actually hitchhiked from New York City to Montreal to see I had a girlfriend up there. Hitchhiked barefoot, New York City, Montreal. Hitchhiked from Montreal to Buffalo to UB. Got there in 8 hours. Each trip was an 8-hour trip, so just as fast as if I'd driven it. Back then, in the day, you picked up hitchhikers. I get let out on Main Street campus, which was the only campus in UB at the time. I take a step out of the car. Some guy in flowing robes and a hat with a feather on it and a big black beard comes up to me and says, "Welcome, my child." And he holds up something, and I stick out my tongue, and he puts it on my tongue. And should have been a warning sign that my career in at UB wasn't going to last very long, which it didn't. But that was like a bad first step there. But I ended up knowing the guy. Amos Porges was his name. Ended up being kind of friends. But I got hooked into the 60s, hooked into radical politics, spent about 6 weeks at UB, got in trouble with a demonstration, went on the run, and ended up doing all kinds of crazy stuff around the world. Came back to Buffalo maybe 8 months, 10 months later in the trunk of a car through the Rainbow Bridge, turned ourselves in, the three of us, turned ourselves in to the police. The judge said to the police, "I see how these boys look going in. I want them looking the same way coming out. So thank you for that, because we got our asses kicked otherwise." Went on trial. All three of us got convicted, but I was only 17 at the time of the alleged crime, so I got youthful offender status and was given 3 years probation. So I got lucky. The other 2 weren't so lucky. And by the way, the judge, I mean, as a lawyer, the judge's name was Joseph Matina.
Sure.
Became a New York State Supreme Court judge.
Yeah, of course.
And we came back, actually, because our lawyer, Bill Myers, in Buffalo at the time, the first judge was a guy named Frank Bager, who was pretty right-wing. We didn't want to go in trial in front of him. Matina was more understanding of our situation. And so it worked out all right. Well, anyway, 10, 15 years later, Judge Matina, who was a state Supreme Court judge at the time, officiates the wedding of my best friend's son. My best friend was Jack Canzoneri, head of the Teamsters in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And Joe Matina officiates. And very kind of reluctantly, at the wedding, I go up to him, I say, "Your Honor," I said, "I'm sure you don't remember me, but 10 years ago you did me a real good favor, and I want to say thank you, and here's my wife and my kids, and I want to say that it worked out. Thank you for that." He says, "What's your name, son?" I go, "Jim Berlin." He goes, "Jimmy Berlin." He gives me a big hug. He goes, "Hey, your dad was a little nuts, but he wasn't a criminal," you know. It was very kind of touching, and we ended up staying in contact with each other for years after that.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. But anyway, so I got into radical politics. I ran for president of the Common Council as a Communist Party member in early 70s. Didn't win. But I worked in steel plants. I was a union organizer for the Teamsters. Had like a radical history there. Ended up driving a truck in Buffalo for Red Star, but I wasn't working steady. And Jack Canzoneri said, "Hey, there's a company, or a local company opening up in Jamestown. I can get you in a job there." So in 1982, I came down for Oneida Motor Freight, driving a truck for them. My family moved down a few months after that. Actually lived right up the street on Liberty Street in the old Wright House, next to the Nord House.
Yeah.
So that's where we lived for the first 10 years here. And I raised my kids here and kind of got involved in the local to-do. And my wife worked for the Alcosh Occupational Safety and Health Group.
Right, I forgot about that.
Yeah, she was head of Alcosh. I helped out with the Philip Morris and the Palace and other things like that. And, drove a truck, kind of kept my nose clean. That's how I got to Jamestown.
So it was Red Star, and then it ultimately became the
It was
terminal.
Oneida first. I came down because Red Star didn't have enough day-to-day work, so Oneida Motor Freight
Okay,
opened up on Flavanna Avenue. I came down, was like the 5th guy on the seniority board, and worked for them for 3 years till they closed. And they went in 81, deregulation took place in the trucking industry. So most of the trucking companies went bankrupt, and Oneida was one of them. So I got a real tough taste of how bankruptcy works, because not only did we lose our job, but the last 3 paychecks that we had worked for and driven a truck for and got paid for got yanked out of our bank account, which didn't seem very American to me, but I guess that's how it works. So we were in tough shape, and my wife, stuck through me with all that. It wasn't my fault, but it was tough times.
Yeah. You were a driver, a dock worker, a terminal manager, TNT Red Star, and then they went through bankruptcy, didn't they? And let you go.
Well, no, before that. I mean, so what happened is the guy I drove for in Buffalo for Red Star was a guy named George Coleman. He was a vice president and the terminal manager in Buffalo. And Red Star had 37 terminals in the whole Northeast, pretty big company based in Newark, New Jersey. And so when Oneida closed, I called up George. I said, "Hey, do you have any jobs I'm down in Jamestown now. Have any driving jobs?" He goes, "No, but I got a dock supervisor." I said, "You know what? I'm a freaking Teamster, man. Like, I don't want to do that." She says, "Okay." Well, 6 months later, it's still out of work. "Hey, George, you got that job?" So he says, "Yeah, I do." And so I got hired on Hopkins, 234 Hopkins, as the night supervisor. So I go there, and they have a guy sent in from Auburn, New York, to train me. And so I'm on it's midnight shift, and I'm on the dock, and I'm wearing my Teamster jacket. And this guy, Joe Kimpy, who was one of the big shots at Red Star, says, "You can't wear that jacket. You're management now." I said, "Just a jacket, man." He said, No, take it off. So middle of winter, take it off, freezing cold. And he says, "You're not wearing a tie." I said, "Wearing a tie? Like, why do you need a tie?" He said, "Well, if you don't wear a tie, the men won't respect you." I said, "You wear a tie, the men don't respect you." I was still an asshole, even though I was in management. But I ended up getting through that. Ended up being the best operating terminal in the company by far. So trucking companies were measured by what they call OR, operating ratio. And if you have a good year, you're in the early 90s, low 90s means you made 5, 6, 7 cents on every dollar you handled. Well, the year I got let go, Red Star was operating at a 104, so losing 4 cents. Our terminal operated at 84, off the charts. Because I was, energy and kind of out of the box thinking. I was always like that. So I get a call one day from the Vice President, Bruce Kennedy, out of Newark. He said, "I'm coming up to visit you." This is like 95, 96. And I said, "You coming to fire me? You coming to close the terminal?" He goes, No, I just want to check in on you." So, okay, so he comes up, and in front of all the drivers, Bruce says, "Hey, Jim, I gotta let you go. I got bad news. I gotta let you go. Good luck to you." So all these guys are watching. I go, "Bruce, good luck to you. You're losing the best guy you got." And everyone whoa. They all gave me hugs, and they all liked me. And I walk down the stairs and around the corner to my car, and I fall to my knees and go, "Oh, what am I going to do now?" That's how my trucking career ended. But Bruce Kennedy, who was the guy that fired me, ended up a year or two later coming to work for us for 8 or 10 years, retired with us, and had the most fun he ever had working for us. Yeah, so it wasn't personal. He had a job to do, and they went out of business anyway. So he got me off a sinking ship.
Yeah. So then you decide, in despair, you come home, you describe it to Linda, "Hey, I just lost my job," but you made a decision. Talk about that process.
Not as bold as you make it sound. I did have an offer to do another terminal manager's job. It was with Nason's Trucking up in Springville.
Nason's, okay.
So yeah, so it's a long drive, and it's kind of a lateral move, and I was good at it. I knew that, but I also got called by GE, the traffic manager at GE in Erie, so the locomotive division.
Had you done their work?
Yes, and in fact, they're a big customer.
Okay.
And in fact, no one kind of knew this, but I got fired for going to bat for them. And what happened is, I was always a kind of wild thinker, and Red Star was northeast. We were the furthest west terminal. They went from Baltimore to Maine and Buffalo and then Jamestown. And we tried to do overnight service everywhere, except Erie and Jamestown was second day service. So I had proposed to the company, I said, you know what, why don't we make Erie part of the overnight lane? Because no one else is doing that. We can win a lot of business. So we did, but a lot of people weren't happy about it because you had to get stuff out on time to get it to us like in the morning. And even though it got in later than, see, most trucking companies if it's in overnight, you get it out that day. If it's in by 7, 8, 9 o'clock, it's kind of too late to work that day, so you worked it for next day service. And that's normal, I get that. But I said, let me send it down, don't worry about how late it is. And as late as it came in from Buffalo, so figure 9, 10 o'clock even, I would call up the next guy on the call list. Hey, I say, look, you come in, we get this load stripped and hustled out, you get on the road, I get your day's work. So you get a guy come in who's motivated to get a day's work. Even though you're not allowed to do it, I'd be on the dock with him, I'd be checking the freight, and sometimes even driving the forklift, all the stuff you can't do as a manager. But the guys let me do it because we're building our business up. So it worked terrifically. It worked really well. But what it did, it forced the people in New England to ship their stuff earlier than you had to cut the time and get it out of there, else it was too late. Well, there was a guy in Hartford. We had a shipment coming in from GE, and these long, 15-foot long crates of brass and copper tubing. Pain in the ass to move. No one wanted to move it. So I get that the guy didn't he had to get it out in time. But one night he didn't get it out. It was for GE, and I got upset that they didn't get there in time. So now we're giving second day service, and we promised us an overnight lane. So I called the guy, and I kind of ream him a new asshole. I say, man, you got to get this. This is GE, And he didn't like that. And I get it. We're a nothing terminal. We're out of 37, we're probably the 5th smallest. He was like Bridgeport, Connecticut, bigger terminal. So he got pissed off. And so the next day, he didn't ship it either. So I pick up the phone, and I call up a brand new guy, what's his name? Jones, I think. Brad Jones. So brand new CEO of Red Star. And I call him up. I said, Mr. Jones, you don't know me from Adam. I run your Jamestown terminal, and you need to fire this asshole in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Because he thinks he's messing with me, but really he's messing with GE, which is a big customer. And I guess Brad Jones probably called that guy up, and there's what I call the trucker's book of lies, but the managers use the same book of lies too. And he told Brad Jones that they didn't not ship it, the truck had issues, mechanical issues, so it couldn't go. So I call up Central Dispatch and I talked to Mike Latini. He said, no, he just cut the load, But I made too much, which I tend to do. I tend to make too much of a noise. So that's why I got fired. But GE, I don't think they connected those dots, but Dan Lynch knew I was a passionate guy and I always was there for him. So he called me up about 6 months after I got fired. And so we got a project for you. It's called a bullet train. And bullet train is where they took people from different parts of the business that knew nothing about a certain part of the business and said, let's look at it with different eyes. It was a Jack Welch thing. I loved it. And they said, let's get someone in here to manage our inbound logistics. So he asked me if I wanted to start that, and I said, yes. And it was not much money. It was a $120,000 purchase order, not even a contract, for 1 year, for 3 people all in. So wages, benefits, everything. $120,000 divided by 3, even back in '96, that was no money at all. But I was lucky. I got Bonnie Kazmarek, that was our office manager, and Fred Rizzuto was our sales manager, to kind of jump ship and join me, and the rest is kind of history. But
Fred was there at the beginning.
Fred was there. Well, to be honest, it was 6 months. 6 months after the beginning.
Yeah, but more or less.
We had no money left, so we hired a young woman from Erie that did as well as she could, but she wasn't ready for this. She's a tough customer, so we needed some toughness and some experience. So I got to actually make the case to Jim Alvino, who was the assistant principal basically of GE. He was the tough guy, and I made the case that if you give me a little bit more money, I can get one better person, and we can save even more than we saved you the first 6 months. And we were considered a best practice by Jack Welch because we did so well. So I go to Fred, and Fred lived over in Delaware at the time. And I wake up one Saturday morning, and I go, that's the answer. And I go to Fred's house, 5 o'clock in the morning, in the winter, and I know he's up because he's an early bird like me. And so I see he's sitting there, watching the weather station, his weatherman Fred. And I knock on the window, and I get, Fred, it's me. Don't get your shotgun, And he lets me in. I say, hey, I got an idea. I'm going to pitch to Jim Alvino in a couple weeks. If I get the extra money, I can pay you decent, not what you're making now, but close to it. If I don't get the money, you're kind of screwed because there's nothing to pay you with. But I think you being there for a few weeks will help make my case. And we talked for an hour and a half or so, and he says, okay, I'll do it. So his wife, Georgianne, wakes up like 7 o'clock. She comes downstairs, and she's in her bathrobe, and we tell her what we just decided. He's quitting a good job to come to work for way less, and if things go well, maybe just a little less than he's making now. And she turns and starts walking towards me. I don't know what she's going to say, and I stand up, and she gives me a big hug, and she says, he hasn't been the same since you left. So, she backed it. Fred came there. He did great, as he always does, and we got the increase in our contract.
Wow.
So
with the basis of GE, they really were your original source here.
They were only customer for 3 years.
Yeah.
And we had other people who wanted us to come. I said, yeah, let's wait and see. But lucky, GE at the time was the largest, most profitable enterprise in the history of planet Earth.
Yeah.
And Jack Welch naming you a best practice gives you a lot of great notoriety. So we were well known. And the other thing GE did was they went global. So I got there lucky at a time where they went global. They were basically a U.S. company back in '96. And in '97, '98, Jack Welch said, look, we need to become more of a global company. So, so they went global. And because of our success as a best practice for the domestic transportation, which I wasn't expert in, I knew that, so I had no worries about that. But at the Boca Raton meeting, when we were named the best practice, that's when Welch said we need to go global, and the first place they went was Mexico. So the guy in charge of the Mexico logistics operation, or Mexico operation for GE, we're in the same building, we're in the corporate headquarters. I'm coming out of an office, he's walking down the hall to tell the GE guy, logistics guy, that we're going to Mexico. And he's going to be in charge of that. There's two guys there. Dan Lynch is the guy that hired us, and there's another guy. Well, I'm walking down the hall with Bill, not knowing any of this, and I see Bill looking on the GE guy in his office, and I keep walking because my desk is further down, and I notice the guy's playing solitaire. And I see Bill Rogers stop and look, kind of shake his head. He comes back to my desk, grabs me by the arm and says, come with me. We walk all the way back down this long hallway to his office. He says, you're in charge of Mexico logistics. I said, Bill, what the fuck? I don't know about Mexico. I'm a truck driver. I don't care. You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. So, my point is that if this guy had been on a spreadsheet or off sick that day or taking a shit, none of this happens. We end up being the domestic guys.
Yeah.
They do, but fate more times than I deserve has kind of shined down on us. We get the job. We end up being a best practice again in Mexico. I really played a big role in GE's development down there. And so next year we go to India and Russia and China and Eastern Europe with GE. So we were in 8 countries with one customer after 3 years in business.
And from there, you had opportunities to perhaps do other customers, or did they want you to be exclusive?
They did, and we were exclusive. And so when I would hire people in each country, and there's like 8 countries, I would say, GE's paying your salary, so 100% of your time is dedicated to GE. But anything over 100%, find some other business because you never know how long this will last. So with varying levels of success, because you're 100%, but that doesn't mean 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I mean, you can be at night and be at a bar and talk shop with somebody and
Sure.
find new customers. So pretty much in every country, they found enough to get us, so it wasn't just G anymore. So I said, I'm not a business guy, but I know one customer is not a good model to have. And we're still in all those countries now. I mean, so crazy how it started. And Jack Welch was a big fan of ours. And I said, his legacy has changed a little bit, but he was the CEO of the Century, and a big fan of his passion style and my passionate style of breaking things, trying things, very, kind of akin in that sense. So he was a big fan of ours.
What's the Jim Berlin's best practice? I mean, if you had to define that, you've just used that term several times.
Yeah.
That's what makes Logistics Plus different than any other logistics company. How do you kind of in a paragraph or two define that?
Yeah, I think it's hard to quantify. I think it boils down to the people we hire. And what I've done when I hire people, I tell them, look, I said, one good thing about this industry, it's been there forever. Since the days of the camel caravans, everything's moved. Everything in this room, this carpet, those chairs, this table, this camera, they all got delivered. No one thinks about how they got here, but nothing sprouts up. So until some kid develops an app that moves a pallet from Chicago to Cincinnati, there'll be a need for people like us. That's the good part of it. So it's a quiet, unsexy, behind-the-scenes business. There's a whole ecosystem of that. Warehousing, trucking, shipping, forwarding, customs. So it's a good industry. But the bad part about it is you have to be able to respond at the moment. If the phone's ringing at 4:59 on Friday, you can't dodge out. It sucks. You gotta pick up that phone, know it's probably gonna be a problem, and you gotta work on it all weekend if you have to. And that sucks, and I get that. And you have to take the call at your kid's soccer game on Saturday. And if you don't want to do that, I get it. It's not desirable. But one, it's not the industry to be in, and it's definitely not the company to be in because we need to do that. And I will make it up to you. And we don't have time clocks and very, very loose organization. But you do things like that, and we'll find ways to make up the time that you spent on your weekend, so you feel that it was justified and worthwhile. But that's the difference. I mean, we warn people. I said, this place you'll never get bored. I can't say you won't go crazy because it's a wild industry, changes all the time. Plan A goes, it's a piece of cake business, but a lot of times Plan A doesn't go well, and you got Plan B, C, D, and E. And if you're moving 10,000 shipments a day and you're 99% on time, still 100 shipments that are screwed up that need your attention. So I think that's our secret sauce, that you pick up the phone, you solve the problem. And the other thing is 3PL, has evolved what that means. But basically, if you call me and need something shipped, and I choose Red Star, if you call back to most companies, they say, hey, Red Star handled it, give them a call. And that's kind of bullshit because we chose Red Star for you. You gave us the ownership of that. So we own that. And we will, I'm sorry, let me see what I can do to get this right. I'll get back to you. And that's a hard call to make. But that's kind of, I think, what we look for in our people. And that's a major difference.
So you just sent out an email yesterday, December 8th, 2025. I was a recipient of it and talked about you 30th anniversary. 30th.
August 6th.
This is 1996, and here we are, 2026. And within this wonderful reflection, interestingly enough, I just did the same thing for the Jackson Center.
25, yeah.
On 25. People talk about company culture like it's some mysterious formula. Ours isn't. Ours is simple. Good people doing good work for the right reasons, giving a shit, I'll use that, GAS, as I like to call it, so simple yet seemingly so rare in this day and age.
Yeah, that's all it is. There's no, 30 years of doing this, and I'm not a business guy. I left college after 6 weeks, so I don't have much of an education. But I've learned it's all about people. It's all about doing the right thing. The people's the hardest part of a business, and finding the right people that will say, yeah, I'll handle that on Saturday. I hate that I got to miss this or be late for this. But that's the biggest difference. And the other thing is, we have a very, I'm still a child of the 60s, I guess. We have a very kind of loose structure. I mean, there's not much structure to our company, and we have no org charts, we have no budgets. We just kind of come in every day and figure out what we need to do to get to the next step, and that's unusual. And it, if I ever write a book, it'll be "Don't try this at home," because this really shouldn't work. But it's worked very well, I think, because we have the right people, and and actually there's besides the '60s, there's a reason for that. When you're a truck driver, I was in the Teamsters for 9 years. I was a manager for 10 years, so 20 years basically in that industry. As you know, it's all in a little contract, and you read it one way. Same words, I read it another way, and you fight over it. And I hated that on both sides of that. I hated the rigidity of it. Life is not black and white, a lot more gray. I mean, the Teamster contract might say you have 3 days off for bereavement leave for your mother, father, son, daughter. What if your grandmother raised you? You didn't have a mother. I mean, it doesn't say that. I mean, like, to me, everyone's different. You got to treat everyone different, and you can't go too far. You can't discriminate for sex or age or race. I mean, you can't do any of that stuff. But, it's like Mike Ditka said, everyone's different. Some people you got to kick their ass, some people you got to kiss their ass, some people you got to wipe their ass. And you got to know which is which. So your one receiver, drops a catch and he comes off the field and, yeah, what the hell, man? But another receiver drops, hey. And the guy that didn't even try to dive for it, like, what the hell, man? Like, you didn't even try for that ball. Get the hell out of here. So business success is all about people feeling important. And at Red Star, I felt like I really ran this fiefdom I had here. It was 15, 20 drivers. We did great. We made money every day. And I felt like we owned this. Until you see the org chart and you see all these corporate boxes up here and you see 37 terminals bigger than yours, and then you're down at the bottom. I felt like, oh man, like that's all we are. So I just have a kind of a intrinsic dislike of that. I don't think life is hierarchical. And I've had people say, well, if there's no org chart, how do I know who to go to if I have a problem? I said, whoever can solve the problem. You don't need to go to 5 people to get to me if I can solve it, or 5 people to get to the janitor can solve it. Go there. And my asshole line to people that say you need org charts, that's okay. What's the most intrinsic organization of mankind? Family.
Yep.
Give me the org chart of your family. Does your wife report to you? Who do your kids report to? Life doesn't work that way. It's not straight lines. So to me, the whole concept is kind of flawed. And I get some people need that, the line of communication. It needs to be a chain of command. But there's other ways to do it, and ours is different. But I think if you treat people right, it works. And if you hire the right people, it works. Someone that needs to be told what to do every day, they're not going to fit well in our company. And they can usually tell quickly. We usually bring in people for a week or two to see what it's like, and do they like what we do, how we do it? Do our people think this guy or gal's going to be a good fit? And it's like a tryout, and that's helped a lot too.
2003. Well, let's go back up because I identify with you so much, Jim. 2001, we bought this building and renovated it. We took a roll of the dice. This is way above our pay grade. Talk about punching outside your weight, term you use. 2003, you buy the Erie Terminal, which is 80,000. 100,000 square feet. This was 19,000. I didn't know what to do with 1,000. And here you buy 100,000 square feet. What was you thinking?
Yes, stupidness. So the story there is a good friend of mine named Chuck Patton. His nickname was Lucky. He wasn't a very lucky guy, but he was a real estate broker. And his pitch to me was this building was being ready for the wrecking ball, and a couple of construction guys tried to fix it up and sell it. And his point was that this place is cool, your company is cool, this would be a great place for you guys to be, and you should buy this thing. So I get convinced too easily. So he talks me into buying it. Now, to jump ahead, we bought it for $2 million, which we didn't have. We put $3 or $4 million into it, and now it's being appraised at $1 million. So it's like the worst real estate investment ever, but from a cool point of view, it's been okay. But Chuck talked us into doing it. We get in there, and there's 30 people So you do the math. There's no way 100,000 square feet is necessary for 30 people, and it was it was like kind of a big mistake in a way. But there's the kind of the people side of it. When I go around the world, and tell me from America, people, good, where are you from in America? You're Pennsylvania, and they kind of look. So I do. I take out a picture of this historic, train station and say, that's our headquarters. And they go, whoa. So it's given us a stature around the world, and it's a cool place to be. And the trains go by every day. It's the main line. So it was a dumb financial move, but from a company point of view, it was a good.
Well, it says here, and you have 50 flags representing all of its employees' nationalities, and it's become the iconic symbol for the global logistics company.
Yeah, we need more than 50 flags. We don't have the room for it, but it's the countries we're in and countries that we have people from. But it looks good. It's prettied up downtown Erie, and it really is an historic building. Next year will be 100 years old. It was built in the Roaring '20s, built by the same company that built the Central Station in Buffalo.
Okay.
So as grand as that is, it was built the year before that. So yeah, it was. I mean, it's one of those things that the soft benefits outweigh the bad financial decision that I made.
Erie Union Station. Yep, exactly. Yeah. One of the things we haven't had, again, this is for your kids, they know you as the president, CEO, founder of Logistics Plus Inc. What is logistics? What do you do?
Move stuff. Yeah, and that's how. For years I said we move things. That's all. That's what we do, and everything moves, and you need people to do it because it's not so easy. But it's evolved, and when I talk at schools, I tell people, I introduce myself saying I went to the Thomas School of Business. Everyone goes, ooh, I said, you don't know what that is. And what I mean by that, it's a Thurman Thomas. It's a little, Pee Wee Thurman getting down low behind the big guys, going to seize a hole and hitting a hole. And I got to have dinner with him this year and got to tell him that story, by the way. But that's kind of how we've done things. And similarly to as the industry's evolved, the moving stuff, moving pallets on containers and on trucks, it becomes more of a commodity. It's not a commodity, but it gets close to that. And you can't make much money, so you have to do different things. So I say we're a solutions provider. And at GE and elsewhere, there's other needs they have that we feel we can do very well. And so there's a lot of times we're helping them with customs and with import of record and with data centers. And we do a lot of things now besides just the moving. Moving's still the bread and butter, but the auxiliary or ancillary things that come off of that, we do a lot of that as well. So,
warehousing? Do you help them do warehousing?
We have over 10 million square feet of warehouse space. And I got a funny story on warehousing if you want.
Really?
So this is a good Fred story. You know Fred. So Fred.
Oh, I do, yeah.
So Fred's. I'm the idea guy. Fred's the kind of just get it done guy. He's the quiet, no drama, no noise. And so when GE globalized, now you're not going to believe this, and this isn't talking out of school because I think everyone realizes it now, but as good as these guys were, they miss a lot of things. So when they globalized, what they requested from their procurement people was, if I buy locomotive wheels in Burnham, Pennsylvania, down by Pittsburgh, how much does it cost me for each wheel? And it's $1,200. If I buy these wheels in Siberia, across the Ural Mountains in Russia, how much does it cost? $600. Holy smokes! $600 savings times 50,000 wheels a year. It's $30 million in savings. Great. And if it was that simple, it would be great. But it's not that simple. And so, as logistics people, we look at, okay, well, what's the delivered cost? So Burnham, Pennsylvania, it's $1,200 a wheel. It's 40 wheels per truck, and the truck costs $400. So it's another $10 a wheel. So not much. In Siberia, it goes on a train to a port and on a boat. So it might be $30, $40. Still a good deal. Still good savings. But if something gets screwed up and we're out of wheels and can't build locomotives without wheels on them, we can make a call down to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and 3 hours later, we've got 40 wheels. if it's in Siberia, it ain't gonna happen that quick. You're gonna rent and charter a big Antonov plane, and you're gonna fly that for like $1 million, and all of a sudden all those savings you get out the window. Well, you think all these smart guys at G would have figured that out, and they really hadn't. So I went to the CEO of the G and I said, look, you know what? This is gonna blow up in our face, and it did a few times. I said, what we need to get a safety stock of all these 28 suppliers from around the world that are making locomotive parts, and have it right outside the plant in Erie. We'll manage that, and we'll make sure that you always have, if it's a week or 4 hours or it's 4 weeks, we got a safety supply so you never run out. Great, he says, great idea. He said, but we just pounded the crap out of all these vendors worldwide to get a cheap price. They're not going to want to pay for a warehouse. I said, let me talk to them. And we knew them all because we were on site
Sure.
all around the world. So I went to all these 28 vendors and I said, look, this sucks, but trust me on this. If GE runs out of your part, it's not going to be their fault, it's going to be your fault. And you're going to end up paying for that plane. It's going to cost you more money than you can afford to get it there on time. Trust me, you won't win that battle. And every one of them agreed, and because they could see how it was going to work. So I go back to John Rice and I say, hey, John, great news. All these vendors have agreed to have a warehouse outside the plant for safety stock at their expense. So that's great, thank you. Well, a few weeks later, an RFQ, request for quote, comes out. It's like 5 big warehouse companies, billion-dollar warehouse companies. So I see it, and I go to John, I say, you didn't ask me, like, we can't bid on that? Well, you're not a warehouse company. I said, I know, but I did trucking for 20 years. It's very similar. You know, like I can do that. Well, okay, sure. So we get invited to bid on this. So Fred and I go to the learning center at the GE plant, which is a big 400-acre facility. And you have these 5 companies with teams of guys in suits and ties and women in nice business dresses and big PowerPoint presentations and blah, 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 blah. And they all, one after the other, all very, very impressive presentations and teams. Well, here's me in my shorts, or not shorts, jeans and t-shirt and sneakers, and Fred is in a button-down shirt. And we're sitting there, and so it's our turn. So we didn't have anything to present. I just had the RFQ, which is like this thick. And I go to the first question. How many years of warehouse experience do you have? None. How many square footage warehouse? None. How many tow motors? None. How many cranes? None. And Fred had an out-of-body experience. Elvis has left the building. He's sitting next to me, but his freaking brain was so far gone from there, like, what am I doing here with this freaking idiot, you know?
Yeah.
And everyone's kind of tittering at this thing. And I said, you know, I get it. It's kind of funny. I said, you know what? I said, I did trucking. Warehousing is not that different. You take in a product, you write it down, put it on the shelf, take good care of it, and when they need it, you write it down, put it on the truck and deliver it. So that part's easy. I said, I pointed to the G, you guys are the hard guys. And we know you better than you know you. And we won the freaking, that was our first warehouse.
No kidding.
And now we have, and we still do it. I mean, 20 years later, 25 years later, still doing it. And we have 10 million square feet of other warehousing.
10 million.
But so it's kind of, you know, like, I guess that's my contribution to all this, like a little bit crazy, but so another side story to that. The guy that I went around the world with for GE Transportation was a guy named Ed Orzetti. He was a vice president. And I went all over the world with him to set up our offices as he found vendors. And he goes to Textron, which is a big, you know, defense contractor. Becomes vice president of Textron. And because he trusted us, he invited me down to Pittsburgh to make a pitch to their business a few years later. So I drive down with Fred and Bob Hallberg and Gretchen Seth, some of the, you know, the original gangsters. We drive down to my Dodge Caravan, and we're in a hangar, private hangar, again with all these other big companies up against us. And I get up there and I do my dog and pony razzle dazzle shit, and we win the contract. And on the way back, they're all in the car, and says, "How do you have the balls to go up there and say you can do this?" I said, "You know why?" So I look out and see you guys sitting there, and I know we can't fail. We'll never let them down.
Yeah.
And I felt that wasn't a bullshit. I was sincere, and we did that as well. I mean, so again, it comes back to the people. I have faith in you guys. You guys won't drop this ball. You won't let us drop it.
Yeah. What's remarkable, and today, I mean, this is unbelievable. Today, you're nearly a $500 million in annual global revenue, over 2,000 customers, 1,000 employees working in 30 countries worldwide. And I mean, the list of awards you've won borders on the remarkable, Jim. And I won't go through that, but I'll refer that to you. But one of the more recent things, because I'm just glad you were able to come up here today, is I know you have an affinity towards Ukraine.
Yeah.
And tell me kind of how you got initially sensitized to it, and then ultimately emotionally and financially involved.
Yeah, two things. One is that our COO, is my right-hand guy now, is from Ukraine. He came to Erie as a Rotary Exchange student in high school for a heart operation. He stayed, and he's the COO of our company now.
This is Tim Asinger. He stayed with
Yes,
Tim, didn't he?
Yeah, it's Yuri Ostapiak. So there's that personal connection, but even beyond that. So I mentioned earlier, I actually did run as a Communist Party candidate for City Council in Buffalo. And I spent 10 years of my life as a student radical and then a Communist Party radical. And I learned a lot about how that works. And even though Russia does not claim to be communist, I still think Putin is a Stalinist, Leninist. I still think they have desires to have Imperial Russia come back, and I hate what they do. So, I said we've had 3, once in a lifetime customers at LP. We had GE as our first customer. We had WeWork, which was our first $100 million customer. We have Google and a lot of other big name customers. And Ukraine reconstruction could be bigger than all of them combined. That's going to be a huge $1 trillion project when it gets settled. And so it could be the biggest thing ever for us. But if we don't do a thing there, don't make a dime there, I still will be doing this because I think this is the battle of our generation. Yeah. I think this fight determines which way the world goes, to autocracy or democracy. And I think if Putin's not stopped, it's just the beginning. So, and I could be wrong about that, but that's how I feel.
Well, I know a couple of specific examples you've done. You've helped Sally Bear, get a bunch of medical stuff there, and that's very local because Sally, I'm familiar with her. And also, you recently did was it soccer or hockey? I forget what it was.
Hockey, yeah.
Hockey. You brought them here.
Yeah, we've done a lot of that.
Yeah.
We also brought the first 2 ships to Ukraine ports, and it's funny because I'm on the G7 Advisory Council for Ukraine, and G7 is the big 7 countries, and I'm one of 3 U.S. representatives on that. And 2 years ago, when I went to that meeting in Berlin, I walk in. I just come from Odessa, unloading these. We brought in 100,000 metric tons of pipe, gas pipe for the gas wells and oil wells. And we unloaded that. And Yulia Shvederenko, who is now the prime minister of Ukraine, at the time was their economic minister, was running this G7 council with the chairman of Siemens, with the 2 co-chairs. And they knew where I was coming from. They knew what we had done. So when I walk in and report on it, everyone was like, wow, that's great. I sit down in this group I've never met, and the guy next to me says, so who'd you use to insure that ship? I whispered to him, well, actually, we found a Turkish sea captain that's willing to go without insurance. He says, really? Wow, you should have called me. I said, who are you? He says, Bruce Carnegie Brown, chairman of Lloyd's of London. I said, well, we did call you guys. You're too expensive. So we've done, again, a little crazy. And it's funny because we thought we would lead the way and everyone follow, and nobody followed. So we're the only guys that have done that. But we also, we deliver medical goods, all kinds of goods to Ukraine. We have an office. We have 3 offices there. We set up a sister city with the port of Chernomorsk, which is a small port city in Ukraine, as there is a small port city in the U.S. So we're doing what we can. We'll see how it goes.
You also hang around. I mean, you're a radical from the 60s. You're my age, I think.
73.
I'm 70, soon to be 75. And yet, at times, you end up at meetings in Washington and other things where, you've got some people we see on major news network, and you're hanging with them.
Got a crazy Rolodex, but I think it's funny because I've always been very open about my radical past. And so if you do that, then they can't blackmail you with it. So I talk about it very openly. And it's funny because not to get into politics, but a lot of things we believed in, civil rights, women's rights, anti-war, I mean, it was good, it was the right side. I mean, my dad, when I was 15, I read Plato's Republic and the Communist Manifesto. And so I got taken with it. And my dad said, it's a great concept, great theory, but human nature just won't allow for it. And he was so friggin' right. I mean, if I'd listened to him at 16, I would have saved like 10 years of shit, It's some good lessons from your dad. Listen to your dad more than I did.
So when you hang with like the Vice President of the United States, I mean, does that
Yeah.
do anything for you?
Well, yeah. I mean, you gotta respect where people are, and but I think people are people. GE is the biggest, most profitable company in the history of planet Earth. Some brilliant people and some idiots. I mean, like, even with all their kind of systems in place and 10 people interviewing somebody for any job, some people somehow get through. So I'm never too taken with anybody because of their position. But you respect who they, where they are, and still judge them for how they act. And I've gotten to know, not know well, but gotten to work with presidents of banks and some, billionaires, and it's funny because people see these guys as like born to it. Yeah, like you at this building and me at Union Station. There's a lot of shit behind the scenes that nobody saw that got them where they are. And I've read a lot about people who were successful, and most of them came up real hard. They're not silver spoon kids. They worked their way to the top. So a lot of respect for that.
Well, I have a lot of respect for you, Jim Berlin. And as this is for your kids at some point to look at this and say, is there at age 30 of Logistics Plus and you at age 73?
Soon to be 74.
74. Is there kind of a Jim Berlin legacy of this? Is there a lesson?
I don't know. I mean, I think, I'm not a big legacy guy. I think you do the right thing, and it's like the banker told my grandfather, paying off this debt that you no longer owed will stand your family in good stead forever. I'm not sure that it has. In my eyes, it certainly has, and actually I've used that. I've used that when we had a couple of tough years, and we had to beg people to put up with our late payments and things like that. And I was the one that made those calls, and I would tell them, hey, I'll show you the document on my wall.
Yeah.
That my family would not.
It's in your DNA, right?
Yeah, we'll do this, and we did. We paid everybody every dime that we owed them. So that's a good legacy to have.
It's a great legacy. You knew you were coming over here today. Thank you for doing this. As you're driving over from Erie, Pennsylvania, was there a question you thought I would be asking you that I haven't?
No, I didn't. I don't think I had that much. Do with it as it comes.
Well, I'm delighted you're
here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks for coming here to of all places, the Jackson Center, which, in a small not-for-profit way is sort of came along the same timeline as Logistics Plus.
And there